Hello to all, welcome to the channel Cloud Knowledge. Today in this video we are going to create Azure SQL database with Entra ID login, which was earlier known as Azure Active Directory login. And why we are going to create with Entra ID login? Because it is a more secured way of creating the database and setting a single admin or creating other users to access the database depending on the role and the privilege we want to grant to them. So we are here in the Azure portal with our resource group Cloud Knowledge. In the same resource group we are going to create a SQL database. So let's click on create button. We'll go to the marketplace. Here we'll search for Azure SQL database. It will open up the different options. We are going to select SQL database, click on create. Page will appear which will give us the different tabs. The first one is basics tab, in which your subscription and resource group will be shown, then the database details. So the first thing is database name. We'll name this database as CK SQL DB Entra login. So this will be Entra ID login. So we have named it as CK SQL DB Entra login. The server, it will show up the different servers which are present in your resource group, or we can create a new server. So we want a new server for this database. So we'll click on create new. It will ask us the server name. The server name will give it as CK SQL DB server Entra login. Okay, and the location will leave it as East US. Authentication, though, this is important. This is the main setting where we have to set Azure Active Directory or the Entra ID as an authentication method. So if you see the authentication method, it has three options. First one is use Microsoft Entra only authentication. Second one is to use both SQL and Entra authentication, and third one is only SQL or use SQL authentication. In our case, in this demo, we are going to make the option use Microsoft Entra only authentication. Okay, so if we select the first option, we have to set admin. The prerequisite of selecting Entra ID or Azure Active Directory authentication method is to have an admin set. Okay, if you go to the official documentation page here, under the Azure SQL, under the security, we have Microsoft Entra authentication, and here they have given how to configure and manage Entra authentication with Azure SQL. If you go down here, you'll read to use Entra authentication with your resource, it needs to have Entra administrator set, and this step is given over here. So since we are using only Entra, we have to set the admin. So we'll click on the set admin button. It will open up the different admins, and we'll go to the users. Okay, user, this is our user through which we have logged in to our Azure portal. So we'll select this user, we'll mark this user as the admin, that is Entra admin. We'll select, we can see here the admin is selected and the admin object app ID is also given here. We'll click on OK for the server. So yeah, the admin has to be selected at the server level. That's why you have to create a new server. Don't use the existing ones because that might not be the Entra admin. And this demo has to use a server setting with the Entra only authentication. Yep. Now we'll leave the setting of SQL Elastic Pool as no. Workload environment, since it's just for demo purpose, we'll set it to development. Compute and storage, we can just go and review it by clicking on configure the database. So the service tier will use the most budget friendly. Okay, so we'll leave it as general purpose. And then the compute tier, also we're gonna take serverless because it will bear us less cost. As you can see on the right side, the estimated cost is $398 for the serverless. Okay, they are auto scaled and built per second based on the vCore's use. And if we select the provisioned, it will be pre-allocated and it will cost you more. So since it's for demo, we'll select serverless and go to the compute hardware. We'll take the vCores as the minimum and go to the auto pause delay. The least 1 hour is selected. Data max size also will limit it to the least and click on apply. So compute and storage is done. Backup storage redundancy, we'll leave it locally redundant because we don't want this to be backed up in any zone or geo regions since it's just for demo. So we'll click on networking. In the network connectivity, we'll set this connectivity method as public endpoint. So if we can connect to this database using our Entra ID admin, then the firewall rules will allow the Azure services or resources to access the server. We'll click on yes and we'll add our current IP address. If you miss this step, later on also you can go to the network settings of your database and select it. So yeah, this is done. Now the next setting is connection policy. Connection policy, default, proxy or redirect, we'll leave it as is. Encryption connections, TLS 1.2 looks fine. We'll go to the security setting and leave the settings as is. No changes needed here. We'll go to the next, which is the additional setting. We don't want the sample data. So this also looks fine. Go to the tags and click on review and create. So yeah, the settings which we have given is shown up in the review tab and we'll click on create. So the validation is happening. You can see here validating, and in the right side on the notification panel, we can see the deployment is submitted. Let's wait for some time. Now the deployment is in progress, and on the main page, we can see the progress of the deployment. Let's give it some time to complete. So yeah, after a few minutes, the deployment will complete and we can go to the resource by clicking on this go to resource button, and it will show us the SQL database created. So yeah, you can go to the overview section and see the details of the database. If we go to the query editor section to log into the database, it will show us only the Entra login. Okay, so this is our Entra ID. If we select this from here, the Entra Authentication, it will help us log into the database. So yeah, we are inside our database with our Entra login. If we go to the overview back again and try to open the server is here, CK-SQL-DB server with Entra login. We can see here in the security section, sorry, it's not the security, in the settings section, Microsoft Entra ID, where we'll see that, yeah, it only supports Microsoft Entra Authentication for the server, right? Since we created with Entra Authentication only option. Now in this page, you can disable it, remove the admin, and make it to SQL authentication as well, which we can study later in the upcoming videos. But yeah, for the present video scope, we have studied that how we can create a secured SQL database, SQL server using Azure portal with Entra Authentication. And yeah, if you try to go to the SQL database in the server, try to log into the query editor using your Entra ID, you have all the privileges. You can create table, alter or delete. Hope you've understood the video. Do let me know in comments if you have any queries. Thank you for watching the video. Happy learning. Bye.